Hey guys, I'm Miriam with Dorman Products, here with Nick and Lemmy, and we're going to be talking about vehicle inspections.
Alrighty, so this sounds probably like a boring topic, but let's be honest, we all spend a lot of hours checking things out, right? That's 90% of the job, I feel like sometimes. So it's a little arcane, but I think it's probably worth talking about. Let's start with like the most basic question, right? Like, what are you guys checking out when a vehicle comes in for service?
So it really depends on what the vehicle's in for. If it's something like brakes, where I have the vehicle on the lift, I'm gonna do a lot of checks underneath the vehicle. I'm gonna shake the wheel down before I take it off, check ball joints, tie rods, visual check on the axles, drive shafts, things like that, like everything underneath the car, visually inspect bushings, especially safety critical things. If I'm the last one to look at it, I want to make sure that, it's not, getting into an accident or, running off the road. But of course, if it's in for something like windshield wipers or a battery, I'm not going to get so in depth. I'm not going to put it up in the air if I don't already have it in the air. But if I'm putting a battery in, I'm going to check the alternator. I'm going to make sure it's charging, things like that. But yeah, basically that's what I do. How about you? Give me your input.
Yeah, I mean, I check all those things out as well. I think that those are all sort of safety critical and just necessary things that anybody should be looking at before they get started with a car. But here at Dorman, we bring in cars for try-ons where we're testing out a part before releasing it for the masses. We ask the people who work at Dorman, we call them contributors, to bring their cars into the shop so that we can do these try-ons. And something I like to do is just make sure that everything is in tip-top shape on their cars. So I like to check, their inspections, their registrations, just the things that maybe they don't think about, sort of a convenience for them.
Yeah, the average person doesn't check that. They're not up to date on that until they get pulled over and it's too late,
Right,
or
yes.
If the re-registration gets put in the junk mail pile,
Right.
doesn't get open for 2 months, when it's expired. So that is a good added value.
That's unbelievably considerate to check out inspection stickers, reg stickers, stuff like that. That's really cool. I'm checking a lot of the same stuff you guys are when a vehicle rolls in: fluids, filters, belts, hoses. I do try and top up fluids for people, kind of along that being courteous thing. I will almost always fill up your washer fluid. That seems to be something that everybody's always dry on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
One thing I didn't hear you guys talk about that I pay special attention to is tires. I really like to check out tire pressure, tire condition, of course, too.
Right.
Even something as silly as like spare tire pressure. I try and take care of that for people, because who checks their spare tire pressure? Like, if I ever get into a vehicle and there's a spare tire that is correctly inflated, I mean, I get like a heart palpitation. I think I'm about to lose it.
Do you go deep into the trunk to check the tire pressure?
No, and I think you and I have talked about this before. And if it's an easy one to grab with the trunk, I actually will do that. I have a general rule: if your spare is under car, if your valve stem is facing down, I will check your spare pressure. Yep. If I have to go dig out the tools and drop it, that's on you, or you gotta ask me or something, or I gotta, I'll mention it, maybe bill you for it. But yeah, but I'm checking out a lot of that same stuff. I think I might be nosier than you guys. I'll spend a pretty long time on something if I don't have a bunch of work stacked up, just because I'm trying to sell something, right? I feel like almost always, if I sell a good job or two, I can usually make up what I lost in the checkout. So, I usually still wind up doing okay on that.
So essentially it really depends on what service is being done.
Absolutely.
What kind of time you have in your day.
And I've also had customers, you guys probably have too, where they just want the one thing done, right? They don't want you to turn a blind eye to everything else, and that's valid too.
They don't want any recommendations to spend any more money.
Right.
Right, I just got a wrench in one hand.
So I don't really have a whole lot of shop experience outside of working at Dorman, but I know both of you do. So do you guys flag time?
Yeah, when you're the boss, right? We're both the boss. Right. I don't know how much that means. Chief bottle washer. You don't flag time, right? You're charging, or you're doing the work and you're charging for it, right? That just is what it is. Yep. But I've definitely worked at dealers or indies, and all of them have had different policies, right? So sometimes there's a couple different levels of vehicle checks. Some are free, some are paid. Some of them maybe you're even free to the customer, but you're still going to flag time on it, right? You're still going to flag 3 or 4 10s here or there. That's almost like a shop decision, right? It's up to the shop owner.
Yep.
Over the years where I was allowed to flag time for inspections, be they courtesy or paid or whatever, I probably forgot to flag a good many of them. Again, because I was more concentrating on, I wanted the work, right? So I wanted to give your vehicle a good checkout, not just to keep you safe, but also selfishly, I wanted to make some money too.
Yeah. I'm not doing small jobs in my shop. I'm more of a specialty shop. So I'm doing like bigger projects, engine swaps, things like that. So For me, no, I'm not flagging time for an inspection because I want to make sure, because I'm doing such an in-depth job, I want to make sure the car is road ready. So I'm going to do those checks for free, and obviously, to your point, you're going to upcharge, you're going to, get more work out of it. You're going to sell more jobs. So yeah, no, I'm not flagging time for it. I'm not billing essentially for that type of service.
So does a pre-purchase inspection get a different kind of checkout?
That's a great question. For me, yes, right? So a pre-purchase inspection to me actually kind of comes in two flavors. Yep. There's the pre-purchase inspection for a customer, right? A customer says, hey, I'm thinking about buying this car, bring it in. I'm gonna just sort of talk about what I'm seeing, right, in my sort of write-up there. Right. And, make some recommendations. You're gonna need this looks good, this doesn't look so good, et cetera, et cetera. I do try and avoid giving any purchase advice, right? Unless it's a customer I'm really close with. Right. It's just the facts, right? And here's roughly what this might cost. This is what I'm looking at right here.
I bought this car because you told me to.
Exactly. I'm good with the wrenches. I'm horrible with crystal balls. The other type of pre-purchase inspection that's important, I've done for both myself and I've done for other people, and that's where you are buying the car yourself for resale, right? So, when I was doing this at a dealer, somebody's trading something, or even for something I'm buying for myself that I'm going to resell. Well, I got to get to know the car really quickly because I have to stand behind it now, right? It's to your point, it's my problem now. So in those cases, I'm even, I'm going to press every button on the dash, make sure every single thing works. I'm going to check to see, do you have both key fobs? Do you have all the stuff? Is there a spare tire in here? You got to go through all that stuff. So I would say, yes, definitely charge for a pre-purchase inspection, and that term has two meanings for me. Nick, how do you feel about that?
I think you nailed it. I mean, for me, it is very important to be in depth in those situations. You're giving proper advice or giving a proper report. But yeah, specifically, like if you're doing for a dealer, like you said, like if you're working for a dealer, you're doing that where you're buying and reselling. I definitely don't want to be the one who signed off on and said everything's good when there's something that I missed, so I'm going to go really in depth, kind of like what you said. So I mean, really, you nailed it.
Yeah, and Miriam, another thing I was just going to mention too that I ran into several times, I bet you did too. A customer might bring something in, right, and they didn't want to pay for a head gasket. There was some repair that was too much, and they were like, oh, you never mind, I'm just going to get rid of this thing. Sometimes I would then offer to buy the vehicle, right? I've already been underneath it. I took a look at it. I might be able to repair it profitably in my own time and either have a runner or something I can sell. And most customers are actually pretty understanding about that.
Oh, that's really good.
Although some would be like, well, why do you want to buy it? Why, you know what I mean? Should I keep it? Should I fix it?
You might go take it to somebody else.
Yeah.
There were plenty of times I did urge someone like, hey, this isn't that bad. I know it stings right now to put $1,500, $2,000, whatever. Right. But hey, this thing still has life left in it. I would do that. I try and be pretty honest with people.
Yeah. But I do the same thing. I always offer to buy. Pretty much every car that I own is from that scenario. It was a broken down car that customer didn't want to fix, and I'm like, all right, I'll take this thing off your hands.
So moral of the story, if the technician wants to buy your car, keep it.
That's a pretty good point for the most part. Yeah.
Well, that covers light trucks and cars, which is about where my experience ends. But Nick, I know you do a lot of performance work, and Lemmy, you've done work with motorcycles and ag vehicles.
And junk, don't forget about junk.
And junk. Is an inspection on a specialty vehicle going to be different than, say, a commuter vehicle?
Absolutely. In my shop, I work more on specialty vehicles like that are going to be used for track use. So obviously, if cars being raced or something like that, it's obviously being used to its limits. It's not like a regular commuter vehicle. So if I'm like checking out brake pads, something that might be acceptable, I might tell a customer, you got 6 months on these pads. I'm not going to let that pass on a race car because obviously it's being used at a much, higher rate. Yeah, exactly. So it's not going to be acceptable. So I am, I'm looking a lot more in depth and, with a, finer tooth comb, just because I want to make sure that that car is safer at higher speeds and things like that, higher performance cars.
Yeah, it's under a lot of stress.
It is definitely different.
Yeah, the use borderlines on abuse. I would imagine too, that customer is probably more willing to pay too, right?
Absolutely.
Like, just because they have 430 seconds on the pads, they're not crying about that last little bit, right?
Exactly, yeah. The entire car is based on money that they have to throw away. It has nothing to do with, I only got, an extra $100 this week in my check,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of at the opposite end of things. I do a ton of motorcycle work. My four-wheel work tends towards kind of weird collectible and or antique stuff. So I'm generally looking at those things a little bit differently. And sometimes, depending on the rarity of something, something that you'd be aghast if you saw in somebody's daily driver on something that's special. It's just being used in parades or whatever. It's kind of like, whatever, it's fine. And then there's some other weird stuff too. Like for tractors are a good example, right? Like ag equipment. You have to tailor your inspection to the vehicle as well as the age of the vehicle and condition. We had said earlier, like cracks in tires, right? Like a crack in a tire on a car, it's pretty bad. A heavy crack in a tractor tire, well, you're at a top speed 8 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So you're gonna be all right. It's gonna be okay, right? Not to mention those are very expensive tires, et cetera. So I try and tailor my inspections to whatever it is that's kind of in front of me. But I feel like probably everybody does that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So what about when a vehicle comes in and there's no way it should be on the road without whatever fix you're about to recommend, and the customer says no?
I mean, it is tough because you don't want to be liable. You don't want that car leaving the shop unsafe, and ultimately, in this country, a sue-happy country, there is a lot of liability. So for me, in my case, in my shop, when I would have a vehicle that was unsafe and they just didn't want to foot the bill for it, I would either make them tow it out. I would make them tow it out so it didn't drive away from my shop. But always in their invoice, I would put it in there, all the details of what made it unsafe, and I always make my customer sign their invoice. So I have a copy. I don't know how well that would cover, but I would, obviously make sure that, I had their signature,
Right.
So it explains that I had showed them and explained to them how unsafe it was, and
But they decided to do it anyway.
And they decided to take it anyway. Exactly.
Yeah, I certainly can't speak to the legal ramifications, but look, this is just a sticky situation. I mean, I think you guys have probably both done this, but like, you'll put a vehicle on the rack and, you don't even know if it frame's not looking great, et cetera. Something breaks or cracks or you're afraid it's gonna. It's like, I don't even want to lift this up in the air. Forget about you driving around on the roadway.
Right.
Yep.
And man, it's just an ugly scenario, right? Like I have no idea legally if that protects me if I take all those notes. I'm taking them anyway because I'm just a note taker, but I don't know if that protects me. And I want the customer to obviously know. And most of the time, I would say when I've dealt with this, it's usually been an okay experience, right? They're like, oh, I had no idea. And then, the thing leaves on a hook and it's heading to the salvage yard. But not every time, right? Some of the time that doesn't happen. I'm sure some of you out there have seen this, and it's kind of scary, right? You watch those taillights go down the road and you're like, man, that person would be driving next to my grandma or my friend or whoever.
Right.
Yep.
And some people, it's weird, for whatever reason, they tend to get belligerent. They always think you're like trying to rook them. It's like, look, man, your parts of your car fall off here. Like, I didn't do this.
You can look at it yourself. You don't have to trust me.
Yeah, Miriam, I don't even have an answer on this for you. It's just a bad situation. Like, I hope it doesn't happen. That's what I do.
But it does. Unfortunately, it does. We'd like to hear from you guys too, like leaving a comment.
Yeah, how do you deal with that at your shop?
Yeah, how do you guys deal with it?
So what do you guys think about state inspections? Is that the same as, say, a courtesy inspection?
No, I don't think so.
No,
but
absolutely
you
not.
Take this one.
Well, so yeah, obviously it varies state to state. Obviously some states don't even have like a safety inspection.
Right.
So it really varies, but no, it's absolutely not the same. It's a lot more in depth. In PA, that's all I know.
Yeah, I would agree. It is very different. I inspected at some point in Missouri, and I think Missouri may not even have state inspection anymore, but I was an inspector there. I worked in Connecticut for a bit, and Connecticut did not have state inspections. PA, we obviously have one here. The state inspection is strange too, because I think a lot of people think like, oh, it's cheaper, I'll get a state inspection instead of a pre-purchase inspection.
Right.
But often they don't check a ton of stuff, right? You have to pull, for in PA, I believe, you have to pull one wheel on each axle.
Right.
To check brakes. I mean, personally, I'd like to see all 4 of them get pulled, take a peek at everything. But the state inspection too also allows for things that maybe, like just because it's allowed doesn't mean you should do it. A tire at 330 seconds a tread, I believe, passes a PA state inspection. A tire at 330 seconds a tread is ready for the heap. It's done. It's time to start thinking about some new ones. Right. So a state inspection to me is almost a totally different type of thing. And I think it's also important to remember too, because those are like sort of subsidized by the state in many cases, like or they're artificially restricted in price. Like there's no way you're making money on that as a shop. You have to sell some work out of it. Right. So people are trying to burn through them as quickly as possible, and I don't blame them, trying to turn bay time and get paying work back in. So the standards I think are recommended by people who know cars, but sometimes they're tweaked and twiddled, and they don't. It's not exactly what you'd always like to see.
Right.
I'd be curious to know what those of you who are out there watching had to say about, what goes on in your state. Do you like the inspection setup? Do you not like it? Do you feel like it's helping people? Are you keeping people safe, or is it not really that useful? I would love to know what our viewers are thinking on that stuff.
Well, that's all we have for this video. You guys should totally go and check out another one. We actually just put one out about me and what it's like to be a new tech. This is Nick, this is Lemmy, I'm Miriam, and we'll see you next time.